Welcome to Amongst the Chaos of Motherhood. I'm Amelia.
And I'm Liv, and we wanted to kind of start by saying thank you so much for all the support we've received over the past week. We're thrilled, actually.
We're glad people are enjoying it.
Absolutely. So, thank you. Keep following along. So this week, I actually sent Amelia an article from Crux, and it said that 75% of mothers in Central Otago, so Queenstown, Wanaka and Cromwell, give birth in either Invercargill or Dunedin Hospital. And to me, that was just like a really high percentage.
That's a high percentage. I definitely wouldn't have thought it would have been that high.
No, so I thought, let's talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's great because living in Central Otago is quite unique in the fact that the closest hospital we have is 3 hours drive. I think 3 hours from 2.5, 3 kind of hours drive. So I also just think that that's crazy. I remember telling my friends in the UK that we have to drive that far for the closest hospital, and they just couldn't believe that we would have to drive that far. It's madness, considering their closest might be, 20 minutes sort of max.
Yeah.
And it's the same with hospital, like any sort of ED or anything here. You know, if your kid breaks their arm tomorrow or something medical happens, you're off to Queenstown, and that's an hour drive if traffic's going well. That just terrifies me that it's touch wood that it hasn't happened. But I remember messaging one of my friends the other day and saying, okay, just in case, because I've got a 2-year-old that's going through a bit of a crazy patch and I feel like he's getting more adventurous. Where am I doing? Who am I calling? What am I doing? You know, what are my steps?
Yes.
And she just gave me the rundown because she'd had a kid that had gone through it, and that was quite reassuring. Just have a little bit of a plan in action because it's not just a quick jump in the car. We're 10 minutes down the road to get checked out. An hour, if something is more so, just kind of scares me a little bit. It's a long time to be concerned about your child.
Yes.
So that was, quite, I don't know, it's good to have a plan in action.
It is. And I think there's, Queenstown and Wanaka and Cromwell, we're actually quite busy, big places now. We're growing a lot.
Yes.
But we still don't have the healthcare to support it,
no,
really.
We don't at all. Yeah.
But I think when you're planning to be a mum or you're pregnant and you're looking, you're looking at your birth plan and you're thinking about where you're going to give birth, you really do have to consider that it's a 2.5 to 3 hour drive.
If you're leaving it to go into hospital.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very true.
That's your worst case, I guess, and for some people.
For some people, no, that's very true. I remember I started with my midwife over in Queenstown because we were living there when I was pregnant, and then we moved to Cromwell, and so I had to change midwives to someone in Central Otago because they wouldn't accept me being on this side of the gorge. The midwives were like, we won't come this way.
Oh, interesting.
Which was interesting, but I didn't take it, I didn't stress about it too much. My midwife was great over there, but I just kind of went with the flow, and the fact I had to meet someone new. I had 4 weeks, so it wasn't too much of a last minute thing, but it did feel quite strange having to change, but it's all to do with location. So I think the Queenstown ones stay on that side of the gorge, and then we've got like Alex and Cromwell this way, and I don't know if Wanaka ones travel actually. That'd be interesting if where they go, or they're just Wanaka based. Anyway, so I was then moved with the plan of Charlotte Jean being my sort of aim to give birth, and the midwife said all this stuff like, the baby's in the right position, you are well and truly capable of having natural birth. And so plan of action for me was to just jump 20 minutes down the road, or 30 down to Alexandria. And even saying that 20-30 minutes is still quite a while to go to your nearest maternity ward for me to go into labour. And just, they give you a phone call, as it goes, and says, where are you at and when are you ready to come through? And so my whole plan, bags packed, was to be at Charlotte Jean and Alex. And so that was the whole plan until it didn't go to plan, which everyone told me, again, not to make a birth plan because it doesn't tend to go to plan.
So last time you talked about being like a control freak.
Yes, you can imagine.
No, sorry.
You can imagine how this went for me when things were not going.
I was just thinking that.
It definitely didn't go to plan. And it was actually quite funny because with my birth, funny story, I was 7 days over for a start, so I was already kind of come on, let's get this baby out. Jamie and I were very ready to be like, let's do this. But selfishly, my birthday was the day after Hugo was actually born, and Jamie's is the day after mine. So
close
when
together.
I had Hugo, he's the 8th of July. I ended up having him. I'm the 9th and Jamie's the 10th. So 3 days in a row, which is very rare for all 3 of your family members to be all cancers.
Yes.
So our house is a bit chaos, but all 3 days in a row. And so I remember being quite like, come on, baby, get out. I don't want to share my birthday. I would like to have one day. It still gets shared now. It's like a weekend of celebrations.
Or like a week away, or it's kind of special.
But I remember when it happened, being like, okay, this needs to happen today. And so feeling the pressure of it all happening. And so, anyway, we went down to Charlotte Jean once everything was happening. And then it just kind of stopped. It didn't happen as the midwife was very unsure. She was sort of like, I think she thought I was going to go down the C-section route, which at one point I was thinking, okay, if this isn't happening, maybe that is my, never said those words to me, never probably wanted to scare me. But I remember Jamie just getting offered a cup of tea and a piece of toast by the midwife while I was in the world of pain.
Oh, no.
And I looked at him and I kind of went like, you damn take that cup of tea and that piece of toast that I would love to be eating. And he just looked at me and sort of went, I'll be all right, I'll stay with Amelia. And he was so
such
good.
a good husband, isn't he?
I think he probably deep down really wanted to accept that, but I think he would have lost something if he had.
Yeah.
So anyway, the midwife came back and she said, look, Amelia, it's been, she tried to recheck me and nothing was going to plan, nothing had changed. And so she said, we need to make a call. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, you need to make this decision. Like, I am not in a mental state to make this decision. And so luckily she did. She just said, I think you're going to have to go to Dunedin. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going in an ambulance. Like, I've got to get in a car right now and drive. And she said, no, you're going in a helicopter. Because if we need to just get this sorted.
Did you feel like a sense of relief?
I think I did, because I was sort of getting to that point where I was like, shouldn't things be... I don't know how to do this. It's my first time. Shouldn't things be kind of ticking along now? I've been doing this for over 8 hours. Like, I kind of thought, I know it takes a while, but I was in, I guess they call it active labour by that point, where I should have been like starting to see some dilation happening and nothing was happening. So it was quite frightening. I sort of thought, my body's supposed to be able to do this. And so, yes, when they said Heli, I was quite excited because I knew there was an opportunity of the epidural by this point, because they only had the gas at Charlotte Jean, and hats off to all mums who do it without any pain relief.
They're incredible.
They are incredible. I give like full hands down, because I broke my ankle and I thought to myself, okay, that was like an 8 out of 10. So surely childbirth's only going to be like a 10 when the 7.
Yes.
No, childbirth's a 25 out of 10
25.
plus. Like it was right up there. And so I remember getting the oxygen and saying to Jamie, this thing's not working. Can you have a go on it? And he no, there's definitely something coming out there, Amelia. That's how much pain I was in. I was like, there is nothing coming from this machine to make me feel any better. So anyway, I was very relieved, because I knew then I could have an epidural and maybe that would help things along or whatnot, which it did. But the scary thing is, at that point, they then putting you in your gown into an ambulance to then get driven down the road for 10 minutes, to then get into a helicopter, to then be flown to Dunedin, which is 45 minutes. And I think the hardest part is they say, we can't give you anything, because we can't give you gas or anything at this point in time, because it will affect the pilot. And so you are left to kind of your own devices with pain at this point in time. And they lay me down on a stretcher, because you had to kind of be strapped in for the flight. But I wanted to be lying down. I didn't want to be, I actually thought about this. I thought, it must be really awkward for them to get someone comfortable in that position, because you're in labour and you want to just move about and kind of find a comfortable position. You can't move, like you've got to stay still.
And it's quite a long ride. It's like 45 minutes. Yeah,
is long. And the poor helicopter pilot that had my hand for this trip, I actually remember swearing so bad and having the microphone thing over my head, and the pilot said, can you please move that away from her mouth? I can't focus, because I was screaming down the microphone thing so aggressively that he said, like, you need to shut her up, she's affecting my flying.
Oh my goodness.
And he held my hand, bless him, and I swore like you wouldn't believe, and I just grabbed this man, and I remember him just swearing with me to try and make it better. He was like my step-in husband at this point of view. Meanwhile, my actual husband was driving 3 hours to Dunedin and hoped to get there before the baby was born. And I just still think that's mad.
Yeah, because so I go and talk at antenatal classes quite a bit about car seat safety.
Yeah.
But in those classes, I've noticed that they're really saying it's a good idea to have a plan for if this happens, and have somebody you can call to drive you, because I can only imagine the emotions and everything that Jamie was going through to get down there to see you. One, it's the middle of winter. 2, the roads are icy. And 3, he's stressing about you and his baby, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I've noticed that they're really promoting that now.
I actually had someone. So
good.
I had a very good friend who's Hugo's godmother, actually, and she was on call. So when I started going into labour, I said, just so you know, this is happening. Like, we'll let you know if we need you, because obviously if it was Charlotte Jean, it was all going to be okay. But I said, if things don't go to plan, this is my backup. I kind of thought that, worst case, we'll just have her there. And anyway, she didn't drive, because Jamie wanted to drive and distract his brain, but she sat in the car with him. So she met him at Dunstan, and they drove together down to Dunedin. But it's really funny, because Jamie went the wrong way. Like, he started coming back to Cromwell. That's how much his brain was not in the right, like, where am I going? He just started driving back to Cromwell, and Kerry was going, no, Jamie, we're going to Dunedin. We don't want to miss this. Yeah. And so it was quite nice, because I think Jamie had some company. Kerry said he just talked her head off the whole way, which I think is hilarious. And when they arrived, because... so by the time they'd arrived, which was really good, it was 45 minutes, plus I waited for another hour and a half to get the epidural, just because the Dunedin hospital was so busy to get it, and I was obviously a kind of bring-in person versus what they'd planned that day, so I can understand why it took a bit more time, but when you're going through that much pain, it would have been nice if it was a
Yes.
little bit quicker. And you don't have anyone to yell at or kind of have that support because I'm left to
You're
my
there on
own
your
at this
own.
point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was quite hard. Anyway, I'm sure there's people who've gone through worse stories, but that was pretty difficult. And so when Jamie and Kerry arrived, they thought I'd had the baby because my epidural had kicked in and my pain had gone from like a 25 to a 3. Like it was way
so you're
down.
quite happy.
Well, I was almost just on my side crying asleep actually at this point in time because I was quite emotional because probably all the hormones and everything. And I just had a moment to breathe because prior to that I hadn't really been breathing, let's be honest. And so I was just kind of lying there very sad. Jamie said when he came in, he was going, "Where's the baby? Did I miss it?" And the midwife who come in was like, no, she hasn't started pushing yet. And and Jamie said, "Oh, we've got time for a coffee." And so he said, "Do you want something? I'll go down." And I said, "Actually, a hot chocolate would be really nice right now." So here's me before I've even started pushing, having a hot chocolate. Anyway, long story short was everything went to plan and I pushed Hugo out naturally and everything was great and lovely, and Kerry got to be there for the birth, which was actually really funny. Jamie was standing up one end holding my hand and Kerry was down the other end helping me push by saying, "We're at the gym and we're doing a deadlift, let's go." And she was fantastic. She was Jamie was crying and Kerry was my motivation. It was beautiful and it was really fun, and I'm pretty sure the hospital was a little bit confused if Jamie was how the triangle was working because they'd not met us prior because it was a new fresh midwife. And so when they were passing Hugo around when he was born, they were like, Kerry got quite a quick hold. And I think they thought maybe her and I were together at one point, which was really, she was very much part of the triangle. So I do actually agree with the support person because there was just so many things, having an extra pair of hands to bring up the bags and she was really good because she went off and stayed with Jamie for the night to have someone there with him because I had to stay in with Hugo, and having that support person was actually a really good thing. So I think that's great that they're promoting it. If you have someone, that's amazing.
that you can do that.
Yeah, totally. What about you in comparison? I mean,
so
I actually don't know if I know too much about your birth story.
So I have had 2 C-sections. My first one wasn't planned. My second one was planned, and they were totally different experiences. So I was overdue with Addie. And went for a scan because I stopped kind of feeling her moving. And so I saw my midwife, and then she sent me for a scan, and they were doing the scan, and it was actually a mum of a child who I'd been teaching that year. And she kind of went a wee bit quiet, and I was like, "Ooh, something's not right," because we'd been, chatting away before that. And she said, "Oh, your midwife will be in touch with you, shortly." And I said, "Well, can you tell me anything?" She was like, "Oh, look, your midwife will be in touch with you."
It's not a very good thing, is it?
No, and so I must have been, I think, just over 40 weeks at that point. And by the time I lived like 2 minutes from where I was having the scan. By the time I got home, I'd already had a phone call from my midwife. And she said, "You need to get down to Dunedin. You've got extra fluid around your daughter and the cord's below her head. And so obviously if your waters break in that situation, the cord's going to come out first, which is obviously a really scary thing to hear. And Addie's dad was working in Queenstown, so I needed to call him, get him to drive over so then we could drive down to Dunedin. I wasn't in labour, so I tried to be as calm as I could be. Took our bags, went down to Dunedin, and then I was in hospital for a few days before I had Addie.
Did they wait for it to happen?
I ended up getting induced. And then similar sort of story, nothing happened for me. I didn't dilate, and so I ended up having a C-section. And that was the safest option for me at that time. But it was a very different experience, that C-section, compared to having a planned C-section. Because when it's planned, I was all organised. I worked up until the day before, drove down, I knew what was happening, went in the morning. I
have heard that is the positives of the planned C-section.
It was actually quite therapeutic. But again, that drive for me down, that 3-hour drive, and actually that extra hour waiting for Justin to get home from work was scary. Yeah, that's just in case, because you've been told that news, you're sort of sitting on it, aren't you? You're probably just waiting.
Exactly. Okay, I need to get to Dunedin as soon as possible. It just sits in the back of your mind. Like, if anything changes in the next hour, I need to be there. So it is, and for some reason with that 3-hour drive, like we're talking about, it is daunting. So you can understand why maybe the 75% that we're hearing about is either these situations like us, or there's actually a lot more people who might be going to Dunedin Hospital or actually fully, because I have got a few friends who go down and stay down there and then are prepared to be there for the week leading up to when they're due, just out of wanting that medical care in case things go wrong. And I actually do get it. Going through what I went through with the helicopter, I actually think part of me, if I did it again, if I go down that route, I would be probably booking myself in to be Dunedin based, just given my first experience of it and not wanting another helicopter ride. As much as it should be an enjoyable experience, it definitely isn't in that state. There's other times I'll take a helicopter ride, but not in this circumstance. I think I'd probably want to be down there. Yeah.
See, I had an amazing antenatal group first time round,
Yeah.
and we were all on a WhatsApp group. And so Addie was the last baby born in this group of, I think, about 13 of us. And so every time somebody had their baby, they posted their birth story.
Yes,
and
nice.
actually thinking back to that, I think only one of the women gave birth here.
Yes, okay.
The rest, I think, were all in hospital.
Yeah.
And I remember that there were more people having C-sections than I thought, either planned or emergency. So that's interesting. You know, that kind of aligns a wee bit with the statistic.
Yeah.
Actually, that wasn't, I didn't speak correctly there. There were 2 that gave birth locally.
Yes. But it's still small
Still a
statistics.
small amount.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, again, hats off to those people. Like, I've talked to a few mums, not many, who have said, yeah, I had a home water birth, or just I wanted to try it at home, you know, and they've had success stories. So, I mean, I think that's incredible. If you can, I would love to be brave enough to have done that, but I was definitely, I don't know, maybe it's the medical background a little bit, and just knowing, like, I don't know, I think worst case sometimes versus just trusting my body in the process.
Yes. Whereas I was like determined to give birth in the hospital. No matter what, I was going to have a baby at the hospital. That was always my plan. I just wanted to be wherever there was going to be the most amount of care that I could have if I needed it.
That's what I mean. Some people have that mindset. But you think back to like our history, how many, like, women didn't used to have hospitals they gave birth in. They were all, I mean, but then you think about how many of them didn't survive labour. That sounds terrible, but like that's what goes through my mind of like there were also a lot of women who didn't make it. You know, that we don't hear of that anymore.
No.
I don't know what the stats are. Well,
that would have been me, because my pelvis is actually too small to birth a baby naturally, which is why I then had to have a planned C-section the second time. So I would have been that mother that wouldn't have survived childbirth.
Isn't that kind of, like if you think about C-sections now, they're quite an amazing process for those mums who probably wouldn't, however many years ago, I can't think of the amount.
Yeah, no, neither.
Like, you know, however many years ago it was where we started introducing C-sections, like that's become life-changing for then those women who wouldn't have been able to have, you know, carry and, you know, live with their baby afterwards. That's quite amazing, isn't it, that they can do that.
And I think, like, although it's really daunting that we are rural. We are. That's probably the best word for it.
We are rural in Cromwell, for sure.
Especially for healthcare.
Yeah.
It's also something I think that brings people together. Like when you first had Hugo, how many people did you have your conversation about giving birth to him? And that was like a way that you kind of, I don't know.
How did your birth go?
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me
like
your
make
story.
a friend.
Yes, so true. And actually, I remember people being quite surprised by the helicopter story and it being quite a, you know, unique one. And actually, I haven't had too many people I've heard of that until a friend recently who actually didn't make it to Dunedin. She gave birth in the helicopter before they'd taken off from Dunstan.
Oh my goodness.
I know, and the poor husband was on his way to Dunedin. So I remember when I heard
so he missed it.
He missed the birth. So I feel grateful that I managed to, probably again, her was the second baby, so maybe it was a little bit more fast forward the process, but I was first, so Jamie had time to drive to Dunedin and could be there for the birth.
Yes.
I mean, it's a special thing to be there for, but these circumstances happen. I also have people I know who have given birth on the road to Dunedin because they've had to drive, or they've left it because everyone's contractions in the process are different and they don't know how far along they are and what it's supposed to feel like, especially first time. And so they kind of get in the car as the midwife suggested to start driving, and they don't get there. Their husbands are helping them have a baby on the side of the road.
Yes.
And I don't know why that. I remember in my antenatal class, they actually went through that process with us. They said,
talked about it.
Okay, so we're rural, so you need to just, and I remember Jamie's face, and probably went white in the face when he heard this. So we're just going to talk to your husbands because this is something you need to kind of understand. We're going to go through the process of what's going to happen to your wife, and so how you can be helpful in the situation and what you're going to need to do. And I remember Jamie sort of thinking, I can't do that, Amelia. Like, do not do this to me. And so, I think there are probably a lot of people who have, feel free to share with us.
Yes.
Have a lot of roadside birth stories and living in this area because of it. And
I don't personally know anybody that has, but I'm sure it'd be so.
Yeah.
I wish that we could find statistics about it, because it'd be really interesting.
It would actually be really
interesting. I wonder if Health New Zealand has anything that we can
look into.
at.
It would be quite good to look at the stats.
Yeah. I guess the other question I had when I was listening to your story is, you said you had to change midwives.
Yes. Yeah.
So I know that, like, all the advice I was given was, as soon as you find out you're pregnant, contact a midwife to see if you can get a midwife.
Yes.
I personally found it quite hard to find a midwife to start with.
Yeah.
I was in a similar position. I was living in Arrowtown, but we were building a house in Cromwell. And by the time I was going to be having my daughter, I would be living in Cromwell.
Okay.
So I was in that kind of like in-between space. And so I originally asked a whole lot of Queenstown midwives, and I couldn't get a midwife. And then I came over here and asked all of the midwives over here.
Yes.
And I ended up getting an amazing midwife, and I'm so grateful. And she's awesome. But a lot of them take leave at that time of the year. So Addie was a December baby. And of course, everybody wants family holidays. Everybody wants time
Everyone wants
off.
to have Christmas off.
And so that can be really hard. It was a hard time of the year for me to find a midwife. So for you to be able to come over and find a midwife so easily, maybe it was a time of the year thing, or
July. I honestly don't know. I just contacted the centre down there and said when my time was, and she said yes, I have a space. So it was quite lucky.
Oh, that is
and
lucky.
At Charlotte Jean, they split. Did you have that too? So you have 2 midwives?
But I mainly only had one.
Oh,
Yes,
okay, I mean, maybe that was my situation because she was so full. She split with another lady. So I actually had 2 ladies who took me on technically, and it would just depended on which week I gave birth. So funnily enough, the timing couldn't be more like ridiculous, but I went into labour on a Sunday night, and so at 6 a.m. their shift swapped. So I remember her coming in and saying, right, Amelia, I've given Maria a call. She's coming to take over from here. I was like, don't leave me. But she's like, hey, look, I mean, she was definitely not like that. She would have probably stayed, but Maria was close enough to come and swap. But I remember feeling very like, oh my gosh, but she doesn't know what's been going on. And, you know, you just have to trust the handover process.
Yes.
And so, but I remember thinking, ridiculous. How did it happen on a Sunday? And they joked about that happening and that they would do the swap. And back at when I was planning this.
And then
I thought, there's no chance, but it'll happen midweek or, you know, I'll be in one of your care. But for it to happen on Sunday night, I remember thinking that was absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. And the other thing which was really interesting was talking about winter babies is, you know, it's actually a lot harder in winter, and you being rural, you have to think about this a little bit more because the drive to Dunedin, the roads could be closed. Same with Invercargill if the snow was that bad. And so I think that's another thing we probably why maybe more births got planned to be in the hospitals because then you're not at risk of having a snowside, roadside winter baby because that could actually be another situation. And for me, with Cromwell being with the inversion layer, I remember thinking, what if I needed a heli? Because it did cross my mind. How would a heli get in here today? Because the inversion's so thick. And I was really fortunate, again, Monday morning at 8 a.m. It just happened to be one of those bluebird sky days in July. Very unlikely, you know, doesn't happen that often.
Goodness.
But it was, and so heli came in and out absolutely fine. But the week after I gave birth, my mum sent me a photo of where the helicopter would have landed a week on if I'd waited a week. Not that I would have, but just to show, she said, well, the heli wouldn't have got in this week, so I'm very glad you went last week. Yeah. And I thought, shoot, there's how many people are giving birth right now and going through that and thinking they have to get an ambulance to Dunedin because the heli can't actually land. And so, again, I feel grateful for my process. But,
It's quite a mental challenge, I guess, to think about.
Yeah.
You know, that you have to think about before you give birth to your baby.
Yes, you're actually going through that whole, the emotions.
The mental load of planning, okay, worst case scenario. How am I actually getting to the hospital 3 hours away? Yeah. How's my husband getting to the hospital 3 hours away?
It is actually, it's amazing. The whole, it's something we as only people who live here kind of go through because I've talked to friends who live in London or cities and they're just going to hospitals. It's not even a big deal. They're like, oh no, I'm just, either they're having a baby at home or they're going to a hospital. They don't even know what these maternity, the maternity wards that they have are for after. So once they leave the hospital, they go to the maternity ward. Whereas for us, it's kind of like the middle ground before you go to the hospital, which is just
it's a birthing option.
It's a birthing option, and they were sort of quite shocked that we had. I don't know. I just find that funny.
It is. It's so different.
Yeah, it is different. Finish off today. We thought we'd talk about our mum wins of the week, little things that have made us feel better as mums this week. So Liv, do you want to share your mum win?
So there's this. My daughter has a whole lot of friends at daycare, and she's very social, and I don't know all of the mums. I know some of the mums, but not all of the mums. And there's one particular little boy who she's been wanting to have a play date with probably for about 6 months. And so I never see this mum at drop off and pick up.
Yeah.
And so I've been sending my phone number on a piece of paper with Addie to pass over to this boy to take home to his mum.
How old is Addie again?
She's 3.5 now.
Trusting the 3.5-year-old to get this job done. Love it.
Yeah, so she's recently moved into like the big kids room and he hasn't moved up yet. Okay. And so she's been really missing him. And she keeps asking, Mummy, I just really want to have a play date. I'm like, okay, how am I going to make this happen?
Yes.
Anyway, so we had a daycare evening and I spotted this wee boy, spotted the mum, and I thought, cool, I know who this mum is now.
Yeah.
And then a couple of days later, I happened to be passing her in the corridor at pickup And so I very bravely,
It is brave.
I was really brave because,
You don't
I don't know this person.
Yeah.
She might have got my phone number
And been like, I don't
multiple
want to be
times
friends
and
with
been
her.
like, actually, no.
Yeah, so true.
Anyway, so I stopped and I said, oh, are you so-and-so's mum? And she said, yes, I am. And I was like, oh, this is my daughter, Addie, and she is so keen to have a play date with your son.
Love
I
that,
just,
yeah.
wondered if we could make it happen. And she was like, yeah, absolutely, give me your phone number. So I gave her my phone number. Anyway, last night we went out for hot chippies.
Love
and
that.
our kids had a wonderful
Yeah.
time. And she messaged me afterwards and she said that her son had a wonderful time, was so excited
Cute.
to be
Might happen
telling.
again.
I was like, excellent. But it made me think, like, you really have to put yourself out there.
Yes.
And it's kind of like a first date.
Yes.
When you don't
Deciding
know this
if you
person,
like that other mum, because
Yes.
they're all, as much as your kids get on, they might be like, oh, I'm not sure about Liv.
yeah,
I don't
and
know
I
if
have real imposter syndrome, so I really think that. Like,
Do you?
yes,
Oh,
totally.
no, that's so,
like I can be
yeah.
quite confident, but at the same time, I'm like, did
Yeah,
I say the wrong
yeah,
thing right
yeah,
now?
yeah.
Or
Just worried
oh,
about it.
like,
Yeah.
what am I going to talk to this person about?
Yeah.
Anyway, went really well. So that was my mum win this
Well,
week.
that is actually really hard because we're all mums, but that might be all we have in common. Like you
Yes.
don't know if people have the same interests outside being a mum as you. And so you kind of have to go on a date with them to find out if they're your person, which is quite a big,
Yeah.
I never thought about that, but actually I probably did that in those early stages when I was making my mum friends with Hugo.
Yes.
And I probably did go on walks and decide if they were my people or not, if you had that bond with them and then you'd be
Yeah.
like, oh, should we go on a walk again next week? This was fun. Yeah. Okay, so my win is not as successful as yours, but I'll take it for myself. So Hugo is going through, we often do a bike ride on my days off with him because I just know he needs to get out of the house. So we do a loop and it normally takes us, we only walk about 3K, but sometimes it takes us 2 hours because he's a little explorer.
Yeah.
And it's
It's
great.
a big bike ride for a little person.
True.
He's got little legs.
He's got little legs, yes.
Yeah.
But he used to do it when he first got on the bike, I think, because it was so exciting, with no problem. Like, just go around and I wouldn't have any worries.
Yes.
Whereas now he's going through that. I've decided I don't have to ride my bike. I'm going to get off and walk, or
He's
even worse,
independent.
Mum, I want to be carried home, and we're in Old Cromwell Town, like a 10-minute walk away from home, or even further sometimes, and you must carry me home. And he's 15 kgs, he's heavy, and that's heavy, and I've got a bike and a golden retriever on a lead, so there's...
And you had surgery.
And I had surgery
how long
not
ago?
that long
12
ago.
weeks? Yeah.
So there's kind of a lot of elements telling me,
Yes.
do not carry him home right now. And I had him throwing a tantrum one day and I thought, I'm just going to have to do it. So I got home and I found it quite overwhelming. I remember getting home and being like, I don't know if I can keep going on these walks if I'm going to have to keep carrying him for multiple reasons because it's just not fun. And so I said to myself, right, we'll give it one more go today. And so today we went out in our loop this morning and he biked the whole way and I didn't have to carry him. And I kind of started playing these little okay, I'll race you to the next pole. And I was trying to make it more fun and get Maddie involved. And I got a stick and I was sort of just doing everything to distract his little 2-year-old brain of the fact that we were getting closer to home. And I think I even might have said, you can watch some cars when you get home if you keep going.
Yeah.
I was just like, please don't make
Motivation,
me carry
let's just
you.
get there.
But he got home in a full loop, so I'm
Yay.
it felt like a win this
Yes.
week. That felt like my win.
Maybe
but
that
yes.
will reset the cycle for him too.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Or I should maybe take the pram just in case this happens again. That's what I was also thinking would be my next decision is just take the pram with you so that if he doesn't make it, I'm not having to carry him. I can put the bike on the pram and get him home just if that does happen again. I've been practically thinking about my options too because I like our walks and I like having him outdoors and I don't want to lose that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's good for your mental health.
And then sad part of the week is that we're both very tired. We have children who have decided to not have a good week sleeping. Welcome to the sleepless part of motherhood.
We did consider talking about it.
We're like, we don't want to be too Debbie Downers this week and
No.
talk about our lack of sleep because there is everyone going through it, I'm sure.
Yes.
But we are both feeling the sleep regressions this week, which is really fun. Sick kids
yeah.
and 2 years sleep regression. So we're in the thick of it.
Yes,
so
we are.
we're smiling through
That's
the tired
motherhood
eyes.
though, isn't it? Yeah.
So thank you for joining us today, guys, amongst the chaos of motherhood. And we'll see you next week for our next episode.